Now, in the early hours of this morning, Russia fired missiles at several sites in Ukraine, its second major wave of airstrikes in 3 days. Air raid sirens rang out from about 3:45 a.m. and while Ukrainian forces did shoot down the missiles headed for Kyiv, 34 people were wounded in a strike in the eastern city of Pavlograd. Well, those strikes this morning come as talks continue of an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive on the ground, although it's unclear where that might take place or indeed when it might begin. Our foreign affairs commentator Douglas Herbert has been looking a bit into this and he joins me now. Doug, the counteroffensive has been sort of in the offing for weeks, hasn't it? It's sort of been any day now for quite a long time.
Yep.
What's taking so long, do you think?
Because Ukraine wants to get it right. They don't want to be rushed into a counteroffensive, which once they begin, they really feel like they have to make some real gains here. Remember, the official objective of the Ukrainian military, the Ukrainian leadership, is to recapture illegally annexed Crimea. Annexed in 2014. That remains a clear objective of Ukraine, in addition to recapturing the territories that have been captured by Russian forces since the full-scale invasion last February. It's complicated in many ways. One is that the Russians have been digging in a lot of trenches, very deep trenches and very, very solid trenches in the southern areas, especially around the Crimean Peninsula that they have been occupying. And in order to recapture those, a lot of them are in areas right now which are very marshy, which would require basically crossing the Dnipro River, moving in the direction of the Crimean Peninsula. Right now, a lot of the land is still a little muddy. They're waiting for better conditions so that land gets harder, that it's no longer mud, which is more than amenable to using these heavy vehicles. I will say this, that Ukraine has secured new promises in recent days and weeks from the Defense Contact Group that had met in Ramstein, Germany, hundreds of millions of dollars in new weapons from the United States. They've been stockpiling a lot of weapons. The top U.S. general, the commander of U.S. forces in Europe, recently said that Ukraine has essentially gotten about 98% of the heavy weaponry that it had requested in terms of artillery and modern tanks, whether that's coming from Germany and Britain or the Patriot air defense systems from the United States, Soviet fighter jets from Poland and some other eastern countries. So it's building up quite a stockpile, but it's a term of getting that equipment together, coordinating lots of difficult logistics to come, strategic coordination of infantry, of artillery. That is not easy to do. Like I said, they want to get it right. But let's not forget that both sides, Ukraine, obviously, Russia, they have lost many experienced soldiers over 15 months of grueling, grinding battle. And right now, they have to rely on fresh recruits. Those recruits are being trained. I will mention that in the recently leaked New York Times documents, there was information to the effect that 12 newly created Ukrainian brigades were supposed to be heading towards the front line as of the end of April. We're already in early May, so presumably that could be up to 4,000 extra fighters. They're gathering men, they're gathering equipment, and they're getting ready, presumably, for that push.
And Doug, there are some commentators out there who say that actually we're kind of already seeing trial runs by the Ukrainians for this counter-assault. What can you tell us about that?
That it seems to be exactly that. Military observers see it's not a full-fledged counteroffensive yet, but let me bring up a map to give you a sense of exactly what we're seeing. There have been in the past week, really, there have been two operations, which on that map have been 300 kilometers apart. But the pink area on that map is what has been the Russian military-occupied area of Ukraine. And obviously south of that is Crimea, which was illegally annexed and occupied since 2014. You see the Dnipro River in between. Now, one of those is the town of Oleshki. Oleshki was where there was a river crossing, basically, by Ukrainian troops, small units, not a full-fledged invasion force. They succeeded in crossing the Dnipro River a few days back. This has been a natural line of defense for the Russian army. That's why that is very significant there. And this was according to a recent update from the Institute for the Study of War, which has been tracking this conflict. You'll also see that little flashpoint in the town of Tokmak. Now, that is a town wedged between Zaporizhia, where the nuclear plant is, and Melitopol, also occupied by the Russian military. It was hit by Ukrainian shells about a week ago on April 25th. That was according to the Russian propaganda agency, the TASS news agency. These are minor, small operations, but they do show, or perhaps indicate, the beginning moves, the signs of a Ukrainian counteroffensive testing Russian defenses in that area to see how strong they are, to see how they'll hold up. Even some of the pro-Kremlin, pro-Putin Russian military bloggers have suggested that the defenses in that area are some of the most shambolic and poorly organized. The Russian defenses in that area, in that Kherson area, and also along that southern Sea of Azov coastline, anywhere in the Russian theater. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with those defenses in weeks to come.
Douglas Herbert, thank you very much indeed for your analysis on that possible Ukrainian counteroffensive.